Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet Malhotra. Ahead of U.S. Vice President JD Vance's much-anticipated visit to India, a senior U.S. trade representative and his delegation is on a visit to the country. The delegation is being led by Brendan Lynch, the assistant U.S. trade representative for South and Central Asia. The U.S. delegation is in India from the 25th to the 29th of March for crucial trade talks with Indian officials. As per sources, Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a meeting with Jaishankar and Piyush Goyal for 30 minutes in the parliament on the same issue yesterday. Well, the clamour is building on an Indo-U.S. trade deal as Trump's deadline for reciprocal tariffs from 2nd April comes close. The Modi-Trump meeting in February had set the stage for India and U.S. to increase their trade, and target is set for a $500 billion trade by 2030. So can India, in fact, really dodge this opportunity, is what we are going to discuss with our panelists. Joining us on the show is Mr. Yogesh Gupta, former diplomat. Ross Feingold, political and risk analyst, is with us on the program as well. Mr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, economist, joins us on the program, and Dr. Bharat Bharai, chairman of US India Community Foundation, is also joining us on the program. Dr. Bhattacharya, I'll begin with you. Well, it's a catch-22 situation for India. There is a lot at stake. Donald Trump is not kidding when it comes to reciprocal tariffs. But the fact of the matter is that if India does not follow suit, we also lose out on a number of opportunities and massive loads of business that India is used to conducting in the United States. Your take?
The problem is not that India has a threat from US in terms of being deluced by exports from US into India. That is not the threat. The way our tariff systems has been organized is to ensure that there is no undue exports or prices that are put in which are destructive to the local industry. And there is no threat really from the US industry in most sectors. Why is the reason that we are not reducing the tariffs is because of the WTO commitments that we can't reduce tariffs on a bilateral basis. We have to then extend those same tariffs to everyone else, which is really what we're trying to work towards, that we should be able to have an agreement with US which is not applicable to, let's say, China. We cannot have zero tariffs on automobiles coming in, because then the predatory prices of China kicks in, and that's destructive, as we know how the rest of the world has responded to the Chinese tariffs. So if you reduce the tariffs on automobiles then from US, then the same thing is applicable for automobiles from China, and that'll be destructive for our sector. And therefore, the Indian government is more than happy to have a bilateral agreement which then conforms to WTO, which means that there should be a roadmap or a pathway to saying that that's a free trade agreement, and we need to then inform the WTO that is what is happening, and therefore India need not extend those rates to everyone else. Having said that, there are still issues that India needs to really carve out, in the sense that if you look at any other agreement, there are carve-outs to that agreement. In case there is a security concern, in case there is a supply chain resilience issue, or in case, let's say, a company is opened up in US by somebody from our land borders, and they are selling something critical to India, we should have the ability to stop that. So it is very important that as we move forward, we have these carve-outs, because these agreements are now a 100-year agreement. So we need to be sure that what are we getting into, and in the haste, we should not be signing off something which really harms us. But fundamentally, India is not against reducing the tariffs from US. What needs to be done is that it needs to be crafted in a very careful manner.
All right, needs to be crafted in a very careful manner. Ross Feingold, your analysis of these reciprocal tariffs, and let us not forget that there is fairness being demanded by Donald Trump, but it should not come at the cost of the bilateral camaraderie and the progress both the countries have made in the last few years.
Yeah, you used a really good word, camaraderie. For India, the good news is that President Trump likes India. He seems to have a good relationship with Prime Minister Modi as well. And even though Trump was out of office for 4 years, we saw with Modi's visit to Washington and the White House that relationship it still exists. So that's the good news. The bad news for India is that President Trump has some very strong views on trade, on reciprocal tariffs, and he's not going to be swayed even if another country is one that he likes and has a good relationship with its leader. So India's got to be prepared to make some sacrifices, however difficult that might be. But there is the risk that if they don't make a deal with the Trump administration, that there could be very painful tariffs imposed on Indian goods.
Absolutely. Yogesh Gupta, it's very, very clear at this point in time that this was not just a build-up to the election by Donald Trump. He has said it on many occasions that these taxations and what they render to the American economy is unfair. But the big question is, how is Donald Trump going to draw that balance? Ross Feingold said that Donald Trump likes India. So there is an opportunity here for us as well.
Yes, I think my two co-panelists have highlighted many points. In addition to what they have said, I would like to make a few more observations. These are that, first of all, tariffs are being used by President Trump more as a negotiating tool. And in most cases, he has tried to put the tariffs on hold after he secured a commitment from the other country that they would take certain steps to sort of either enter into negotiations or to reduce the tariffs or to do things which the US wants. So in a sense, that is the beginning of some kind of negotiations on various issues of mutual concern. And that is what India is trying to do via a trade agreement, which my co-panelists mentioned, that we are trying to work out a trade agreement under which we can take care of their concerns. We have made it known that we are willing to address, the trade deficit between the two countries by purchases of, American oil and gas, and, wherever these are applicable, wherever we can buy these things. So, India is trying its best to, I think today we have taken some steps to exempt the Google from certain taxes, to which the Google and some other American online companies from certain taxes, which the America was trying to seek. So, in other words, we are trying our best to accommodate the US demands or the US interests or requirements. But in a sense that while doing so, we also safeguard our interests, we also safeguard our requirements and our interests and work out an agreement which is mutually beneficial and, which satisfied both countries. At a political level, as my previous co-panelists said, we have a good relationship with President Trump, between him and Prime Minister Modi, and I think the United States is still very much interested to have India on its side and have close relations with India. Number of senior cabinet secretaries from the Trump administration will be visiting India, in a short period of time, one after the other, to engage with us on various issues. So trade is just one issue. There are so many other issues on which we would like to expand our bilateral cooperation. So that is the larger perspective, larger picture.
All right, the larger picture. All right, let's also get Dr. Bharat into this conversation. Dr. Bharat, JD Vance is also going to be in India in some time. The previous panelists feel that it's a tight rope for both the countries to walk on, but there is obviously benefit in India or benefit to India when it comes to these tariffs. There is obviously an opportunity for more business to pour in to both these countries. Is that the outlook that India should in fact undertake at this point in time rather than looking at the negatives?
I agree. When you look at the much larger and longer term picture, India has a great opportunity. China became a big manufacturing nation because USA was the big consumer market. Right now we are looking at India having about $46 billion trade surplus with USA, and President Trump does want to have a level playing field. So India has no choice, but as a good business entity, we should try to adjust our tariffs. But look at larger picture. United States is trying to reduce its dependence on China for consumer goods. Instead of them going to Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia, or Philippines, they would rather bring that business, manufacturing business, to India. So when we look at our youth, our employment situation, it will be much advantageous for India to become a manufacturing nation like China, which will give a big industrial base to India, become part of the global supply chain, and give a lot of jobs to our youth and set up us as a world-class manufacturing nation. So when you look at that much larger picture, I think it is big advantage to India that there is a political will and the desire in United States to diversify away from China, and India should grab that an opportunity as a long-term benefit to become a global manufacturing hub.
You're absolutely right. And Mr. Bhattacharya, let us also not forget that there is this angle of China also that the Americans have always kept in mind while preferring India. Do you think under Donald Trump that is likely to aid India, for the lack of a better word?
No, absolutely. I think as the previous panelists mentioned, that this arrangement kinds of brings India back into a bus that it should not be missing at all. It positions India where China was in around 2000 and be able to leverage the US market for growth, and it's mutually beneficial for US and India. And clearly from what has happened from a geopolitical perspective, and the leaks that we have heard where we have talked about or we have heard about war plans with China being discussed with Elon Musk, which clearly shows that US does believe that its most potent adversary is China. And clearly, therefore, it would like to move away its supply chains from China. Why would it keep its supply chain linked to China, which is a potent adversary? And if you look at any other country in the world, like the examples that were given with Indonesia, Vietnam, and so on, they're minuscule compared to the capability that India brings to the table, with the 1.5 billion people who are largely in a working population. But I think what we really need to focus on moving forward, because there isn't really a quarrel between US and India. We are agreeing to everything, and so does US look forward to. I think there is enormous amount of convergence, but what we really need to look at is issues such as agriculture, which is something that India would like to protect, and so would US. US would like to push out its agricultural products, which are getting tariffed out from other markets, to be coming into India. India would like to protect its own farmers and agriculture sector. I think those are the sticky points that we need to look at. The other big one is services. India would like to continue to have services through mobility of people, passporting, and therefore that's another area that India needs to look at when we are negotiating these agreements. But once negotiated, there will be so many cases where we will have 0-0 reciprocal tariff, that this is going to be an economic behemoth that will be created between US and India. And US is still a technologically advanced nation. Most of the imports that we have from US, we need them. The rocketry components, the Starlink kind of solutions, and so on and so forth. We anyways need them, so we don't want to tariff them. And the things that US would need from us, they would anyways need from us, because they cannot use their own labor, which is extremely expensive. They would need low-cost labor, which we have a lot of from an Indian perspective, at least for the next 10-15 years. And so it's really a marriage made in heaven. I think the devil would now lie in the details, how we navigate through the challenges that will come up as this negotiation moves forward.
Fair enough. And Ross, do you also, enjoy looking at this China angle when it comes to the Indo-US relationship as well? Obviously, with escalating tensions between these two powers, India comes as a handy ally for not only trade but also our location perhaps will help the American plans and strategies in the future.
Certainly all those things are correct, but I think we need to be very careful, and we shouldn't just depict India as merely an alternative to China for supply chain purposes. India has a lot of excellent attributes that make it a good partner for the United States. One of those is to move manufacturing there, but there are other things such as the Quad relationship with Australia and Japan as well, and other bilateral relationships such as the one with the United Arab Emirates and Israel, India and the United States is also getting more and more attention. So I'd be careful, though, about selling India to the United States as merely a manufacturing location, because the reality is India is going to compete with other places for manufacturing to move to from China as well. In Southeast Asia, there's Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia. In the Western Hemisphere, there's Mexico as an alternative for manufacturing. So that's definitely going to be a battle that India is going to have to fight. But across the broader relationship, I think India should be selling to the United States the other things that it offers the U.S. as well.
Absolutely. Dr. Bharat, your thoughts on the same, that India is not only being looked at as just an ally or just a country that has the potential and the capability of offsetting China's plans?
I agree. India, as I mentioned, can become a global manufacturing hub, not only supplying to the United States as a reliable partner. Remember, we are the largest English-speaking country in the world. So as compared to China and many other countries, we offer an advantage of the language, a democracy, a legal system which can be taken care of. So we offer many logistical advantages as compared to many other countries. Plus, it's an advantage to our own manufacturers. Not only they will have the US market, but they will have the European market, the global market, but also our own domestic market with 1.4 billion people. So I think this will be very well taken advantage of to bring India, really make in India a manufacturing hub.
All right, absolutely. Mr. Gupta, India has its own aspirations as well, and these aspirations definitely can use, I wouldn't call it guidance. I would perhaps limit it to a friendship that we have with America, and it would be very, very handy if we can leverage the kind of bond that we have seen between Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi, because hardly two leaders have such a chemistry.
Yeah, absolutely. We have, frankly, a situation of competition with China, call it rivalry, call it whatever, and that is not going to go away in the near future. That is a trend which will continue with us for many, many years. So I think in the current situation, it is absolutely necessary that we have good relations with the United States. And for the same reasons, President Trump also feels that India should be on their side, in the broader picture. And he's trying to get Russia peeled off from China so that there is a better strategic balance between the United States and China. It is extremely important, to maintain this balance for global peace, security, stability, and so on. So I hope that all these trade negotiations and other issues will fit in this wider political perspective, and of course, India will do its best to take on board the American concerns as much as we can.
All right, Ross, final question to you before we wrap up. There is also a lot of disturbance in the world today. There is the Ukraine-Russia war, which of course has the telltale signs of ending. The Middle East does not look good at this point in time. There are disturbances brewing up in Turkey as we know it for the last couple of days. All's not well in the South China Sea as well. The Chinese government has been flexing its muscles. There is a lot of optics at play. How can a responsible power like India with America seize control or perhaps alleviate some of these issues, perhaps say in the next few months or years?
The message from the Trump administration, at least as far as U.S. interests are, is peace through strength. That's a slogan that the Trump administration likes to use. It probably means a significant investment in U.S. defense, so a higher defense budget in the coming years. But at the same time, the U.S. encourages its friends to do the same. The U.S. is encouraging its friends in Asia, in Europe, and I think they'll also encourage India to invest even more in their defense, and that's the best way to protect one's interests, especially among larger powers like the United States and India, which need to protect their interests. They have a near abroad or even further abroad. They have waterways to protect, and they have close relationships with other countries that are also looking to the larger countries to play that role. So for better or for worse, I think one of the keys is to be significant higher investments in defense spending.
Right, and Mr. Bhattacharya, you know, there is obviously a change in paradigms when you talk about the Americans and the Russians as well. How does India fit into that? It's a very interesting, tri-party association that has never been seen in the past.
As we all know, the geopolitics is shifting faster than we can ever imagine. I don't know, it's a three-way move, or is China also a part of it? Because there has been overtures from President Trump of U.S. to China also. There has been talks about having a Trump Tower in Beijing and Moscow. So it's really complex. But if you go back for 15 years and see in which direction U.S. is orienting itself, it came out of Afghanistan because the point was that we should focus our resources on one adversary, and the unsaid adversary was China. and that process was started by Trump, continued by Biden, and again is getting continued by Trump. So that's the deep nature of US's thought process. Now, clearly, under the Trump administration, US is aligning with the Putin administration in Russia. And India and Russia have been, if I can use the word, iron brothers, and that's being spoken in terms of Pakistan and China, but let me borrow that word. Russia and India has been iron brothers for a long time. So there seems to be a synergy coming up. There is also the change that is brought in by climate change, which is essentially the North Sea getting melted, and therefore shipping lines being able to ship things from Russia to US very quickly, rather than going down the Taiwan Strait, through the Malacca Strait, from Africa, from India into the Suez Canal and into Mediterranean. So they've short-circuited all of that with the warming and thawing of the Arctic Ocean, with the Arctic Sea. And so that's going to lead to reorientation of the big powers. And the big powers here we're talking about is Russia, US, and now India. So they're very interesting times that we are seeing. And I think realpolitik has taken the front seat right now, and the issues around human rights and rule of law and so on has gone in the back end right now. It's pure realpolitik,
right.
What for me kind of politics. So it'll be very interesting to see how things.
All right, Dr. Bhattacharya, we've run out of time. Appreciate everybody who joined us on this conversation. Thank you so much. All right, moving on. The unforgettable saga of Sierra Leone is the story of a UN mission called